I couldn't bear my testimony like I was supposed to.
Do you think I am an angry ex-Mormon?
But if someone says, "Oh, you don't believe in a personal God that cares about you and loves you," and like gives me the whole spiel, and I'm like, "No," then you're an atheist. Okay, like that's fine. I'm not trying to be a wolf in sheep's clothing or anything.
Hey there YouTube, I'm Forrest Latter-day Skeptic. In today's video, I have my first interview on the channel. I interview Marty, who runs the podcast called Where Will You Go? On the popular YouTube channel, Mormon Discussions. I thought the conversation went well, especially the second half, so hang around until the end to make sure you don't miss it. Hey, really quick, I wanted to give a shout out to my buddy's coffee company, New World Tropical. If you're a proper ex-Mormon and have become a coffee snob, you'll love this single origin coffee from Costa Rica. So make sure you go to their website in the description below and check them out. Hey there, everybody. Forrest Latter-day Skeptic here. I'm doing my first interview, and I have on with me Marty from Mormon Discussions, the YouTube channel, and she runs the podcast, Where Will You Go? So welcome, Marty.
Thanks.
Cool. I thought we'd just start off. I don't know. I think my channel is a little bit excluded from some of the other ex-Mormon channels, so I don't know if there's a lot of crossover. So just want to start with some basic background. If you just want to give a few minutes on who you are and what you do, and a little bit about your channel.
So, yeah, I'm a former Latter-day Saint, right? I've been hanging around since right before COVID, and I started. Bill Brill put out a thing on his Facebook and said, "Hey, we need women's voices," and so I had been itching to try to create content, and so I used that as an opportunity to do it. So that was a little over a year ago. And I sporadically publish content. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
And at this point, you have, I think, what, around 20, 30 different interviews?
Like 21 or so, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, do you want to, I don't know if you want to get into your family life at all, how long you've been inactive versus active?
Yeah, I grew up Latter-day Saint. Trying to think. I mean, it's just a regular story. I don't know. Like I could go long, I could go short. Met my husband in like my second year of college. We got married. I finished college, moved out to Colorado for a while.
And I'm assuming
Married in the
temple.
temple.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't serve a mission. I almost did. My husband, it was kind of funny. We almost broke up over it because I was like, yeah, I want to serve a mission. And I didn't want to seem too eager to get married because I don't know, I just didn't. And then he was thinking I wasn't that interested, so he was gonna like move on. So, anyways, we figured it out. We ended up getting
And was
married.
that timing, was he already a returned missionary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
Yep.
different than if you both served at the same time.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, that was back when women had to wait till they were 21. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, we got married. I graduated, and then we have 4 kids. Our oldest was, well, our second oldest was almost 8 when we left. Or actually, our leaving was gradual, right? Like it wasn't just sudden.
Yeah.
So I would say the collapse of belief happened, and then we still baptized our daughter because at the time we were kind of like this. It was really a lot of turmoil. We're like, man, we're not even sure where we're going to be in a year, and so kind of made the decision like, I think we'll regret not baptizing her, but we really won't care if we do baptize her. And Bishop was really cool about it. And at that point,
As in you were pretty honest with the bishop
oh
about
yeah,
you guys? Oh, wow.
we were really honest with him throughout the whole thing. But like our intent was still there. Like we still wanted to participate. We're just very honest about where our beliefs were. And the way that my husband put it is he still had a drop of faith, and that was good enough for the bishop. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then it was like right after that COVID shut everything down. So that made it easy to like disappear, but it also made it hard to like meet new people too, because it was hard going through that.
Yeah,
So,
which I'm sure, I mean, like everybody basically knows at this point, like leaving, one of the hardest and most challenge, like dangerous parts about leaving is finding a community to kind of fill the void, if you feel like you've lost your community. And so I doubt COVID was very like conducive to finding a follow-on community.
right. Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I had a couple of key friends, I feel like, that really helped me through. Like we had um part of our babysitting group in Colorado, one of the couples was not LDS, and I remember calling her and I was like, and they didn't go to church. And I just remember calling her. I'm like, you don't go to church. How are you such a good person? You know, and I was just talking to her about stuff and she helped keep me sane a little bit.
Nice.
So I had some people that I could rely on there.
And I think sometimes we like paint this picture a little bit too black and white of like, oh, you left the church and now nobody in the church wants to talk to you, or you lost your whole community. And it's like, I actually grew up with a lot of friends that me leaving the church wasn't a deal breaker. It wasn't like they
Right.
stopped. So I think honestly, I would be shocked if the majority of the time people felt like they lost everybody. Like I
Yeah.
think it's more probably more common that you have real friends that that's not your only the only thing that keeps your friendship going.
Right. No, I think that's right. Some people, I think, in the heart of Utah probably don't have a lot of friends that are not LDS, though, so it might be harder.
Yeah, so
Um,
I'm not in Utah, so and I was in Nevada when I was a member of the church, and I had a lot of friends that weren't members, and even the friends that were. Again, I don't want to like play the Utah game too much about like how it's different,
no, I don't like
but
that game either, but I know what you mean.
yeah, I think my friends, I think my Mormon friends, they saw a lot of non-Mormons that they were also friends with, so it wasn't like I was leaving. You know what I'm saying? Like they had friends that were Mormons and not Mormons, and so for me going from one to the other, it wasn't like I was leaving their circle. Where like in Utah, it seems, or at least people present it this way sometimes, that if you aren't a part of this group, you are now, the number, or you're all by yourself in the other group. Which I don't
Right.
know if that's real or if that's just the way ex Mormons sometimes present it.
Right. Yeah, and I think I don't know, when you kind of stepped away, did you feel like you needed to tell everybody everything or did you keep that to yourself?
So when
A
I
little
left,
of
and
both.
I don't know, I talked to a lot of people, but I would say at that point, majority of my friends were not Mormon. So I would talk to them, but it's like they didn't really understand. So it
Hmm.
was more like I talked to my siblings, and a lot of them had already left. So I think my siblings were probably the people I was able to get that outlet at, where like, hey, I need to talk to somebody about this, and they were also ex Mormon.
Right. That
Uh,
probably helps a lot because it's
yeah,
like,
I guess that's. I think like everybody does have such a different experience. Like we all have very similar experiences in so many ways,
right.
but there's like so many different variables that it actually is hard to get any kind of coherent narrative across everybody.
Yep, for sure. Like your
Which
personality, your family's personality.
the
Yeah.
Mormonism that you were taught and the
Hmm.
Mormonism that your family preaches,
Hmm.
like it's not all the same, and
That's true.
those nuances matter.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I guess getting into that kind of, would you like to describe a little bit about your podcast in particular and um, where will you go? Kind of the mission of that and what your purpose is with that.
So I I don't know. I would say there were kind of two things on my mind when I I I created it. I felt like it was time for me to move past like at the bitter phase. Like I think people know what I'm talking about when I say that, the angry phase, whatever you want to call it. And I didn't I felt like there were plenty of people putting out the stuff and doing it better too, of going through the work of going through all the weeds of Mormon history and stuff. So I wasn't super interested in that anymore. Um, and then I also wanted to, I don't know, bridge building is, I feel strongly about bridge building. Like, So that's part of it. Um, and another part of it is I feel like my political doesn't line up with most ex Mormons. And so there's just different things that everybody seems to care about in the ex Mormon world that is like ex Mormon plus. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's where I'm coming from. And a lot of my stuff is I try to talk to people I disagree with. I know I don't interview them the same as the people I agree with. Like, I know I'm terrible at that, but at least talking to them, I feel like is a good thing. So,
I mean, so I disagree. I thought one of the questions I wrote down to ask you is basically at first it's you do an awesome job at pushing both sides. So like for example, my brother, you push my brother really hard, but I also hear you push ex Mormons quite a bit, and it's usually along the lines of like, hey, can't you leave it alone? Or like not just can't you leave it alone, but hey, do you think it's healthy to kind of stay in that world and constantly just be fighting against something? Like that seems like your ex Mormon kind of the limit that you're trying to fight against. And then on the other side, like when you had my brother on, you were very willing to push against his beliefs as well. So I thought you did a great job, and that kind of leads me into the question of, what are those boundaries for yourself? Where do you are you trying to like my channel is obviously pretty aggressive, a lot of stuff against the church. That's very much so the John Dehlin style as well. Or are you porch time where a lot of times you're complimenting the church or you're fighting against ex Mormons that are pushing? Does that make sense?
yeah. Um, my thing is, I'm trying to say what I think. And a lot of times, what I think is not necessarily decided, if that makes sense. I don't
No, it
know.
makes sense.
Like,
It makes sense. Not only does it make sense, it's good. I think
yeah,
I don't know if this is a Mormon thing or just a human thing, but it's like very common to have to feel the need to have an answer.
yeah,
And that's actually something I've loved being an ex-Mormon is I can say I don't know, and it's like a weight off my chest. I love it.
yes.
So yeah, that's totally good here. So you can have answers that are I'm not sure.
Right. And then the other thing, as far as where, yeah, where my boundaries are, I, if I can see the other side of it, or if I can see a skeptical point of view of whatever someone's telling me, then I'd like to know if they've thought of it, or if, and I guess that's kind of, I don't know if it's always healthy to be like that all the time though.
Well, so it's almost like the devil's advocate or like contrarian,
Yes, yeah,
which I I don't know if that's always healthy, but I do think that's a good strategy to prevent yourself from becoming too dogmatic.
for sure.
So I think
But
that's
if you're, but it's almost like I've wondered, like if you need to be dogmatic about something to just propel you forward and move on with your life, you know what I mean? And just
yeah, this
let
seems kind of
yourself,
like the Jordan Peterson
yeah, a
stuff.
little bit. I would also say even so over on Chris Hanna's channel, we've been playing with John Vervaeke's stuff, and I just none of us like can take it seriously, and it's like church, and it's just really hard to take seriously. Even though I really like John Vervaeke and I like what he's trying to do, but yeah, it's rough. It's
Yeah,
rough trying
so I watched
to.
your guys' first episode, but I haven't watched enough of the only John Vervaeke I've seen is him on Lex Friedman, and I
Oh,
watched him specifically
that's
because
pretty good on there, actually.
Chris was like, oh, we're gonna do this review, and I was like, who is this guy? And the first video, of course, that pops up is him with Lex Friedman. But then I think did you guys show clips on that?
I think so. I
And I
think he
think one
did.
of the clips I was like, oh yeah, that's a little bit dramatic. Like he's trying to like add an emotional piece to it,
Hmm.
which I think
He's trying to motivate people. He's trying to make it seem important, right? He's trying to sell it.
yeah, exactly. And I think as an ex Mormon, maybe you're just your like antennas are up and you're very aware of
Hmm.
that and very against or not necessarily against it, but you're very like hyper focused on it if it happens.
Hmm. Yep. But like I said, I don't know if that's healthy. Like maybe it's okay to willingly let yourself participate in something and just not naively. right? Like I'm not naive anymore. I'd like to think I'm not naive anymore. So like, but allow myself to trust someone just because I know, you know what I mean? Just for my own benefit, I guess. I don't know.
So I do think sometimes the criticism against ex-Mormons comes down to this idea of like, you know, what do you have or what are you building up or stuff like that. But I think like I get confused on it partially because I don't feel a lot of the. I think some people they feel like they're missing a lot more than I felt when I left.
Hmm.
Um, but like for example, you were just saying that maybe you need to have something to propel yourself forward. And can you change that into like a more practical example of what you mean? Because sometimes I think like that sounds like an interesting idea, and then when you're like, wait a minute, like, do you mean how do I get up the next day? Do you mean what motivates me for in my life in general? Because I feel like I have everybody has answers to those things regardless of your underlying faith.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it is my personality that needs something like this, and maybe not every personality needs it, but um, I can feel like I can feel like I'm just on autopilot, and there's nothing like I'm just doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it's not a matter of being motivated necessarily. Like I don't feel necessarily depressed, but it can feel aimless. I guess like it's like I don't know. I feel like it's hard for me to look out in the future and see like what's the big picture. I guess without that big picture, it's hard to like narrow down the closer goals. You know, like for example, um, I went back to work last year, and it was kind of on a whim. Like it wasn't part of a bigger plan or anything, and I've enjoyed it. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but then now I'm in this pattern of going to work every day, and it's like so okay, I went from doing this pattern to this pattern, but what's the point? Like, I don't quite know how to. It, yeah, I don't know. It's about meaning, I think, for the most part.
Oh yeah, that's definitely what I was like. Oh, I think this is she's talking more about how do you find meaning so that way when you so it's not so much about propelling yourself forward, you're propelling yourself forward, but then you ask like
Why?
why. Like
Yeah.
I just made the next thing happen and the next thing happened and now I'm just kind of in like this rat race of making things happen and
Well,
I
and
don't have a
you have glimpses, right? Like you have glimpses of or moments where you feel like you're just in the right place, you know? And it's not that I need a lot of those or anything like that. And I've honestly wondered, like maybe I'm just programmed to think I need to have meaning, I need to have meaning, and it's not really something I actually need, you know? Like I've thought of that before too, but I don't know.
yeah I don't advocate for not having meaning, but I do maybe agree that like I think you can live a satisfying, maybe not satisfying. You can live a semi joyful life just doing your thing and not having any big picture understanding. But I do agree that if you have meaning behind what you do, it just makes your life that much more enriching.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and
and
I wouldn't say I lack it a lot. When I interviewed John Vervaeke, I asked him something similar, like, "Do you feel like you've landed?"
yeah,
Because
that was awesome, by the way.
he he's
I haven't watched the interview, but I just they were like, oh yeah, you interviewed him. I'm like, you interviewed John Vervaeke? That's awesome.
yeah, that was it was one of my first ones too. I think that goes to show like I feel like he's a very genuine person. Like I think he's the kind of person that you would want to be your friend. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that like even the best people can fall prey to like tons of people worshiping them and then they justify all
Yeah,
kinds of
or
things.
even just a practical screening. Like I have 20 people, every hour asking to interview me. I have to say no at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that could be a thing.
So, but I asked him that, and he basically said no. He's like, and he said something similar, like, so he isn't like completely solid, but I guess for him, it's the process of. doing his Neoplatonism, just that practice. And the practice is his meaning. It's not necessarily that he knows what the meaning of life is. It's just that he knows that these practices give him that aim, I guess. I don't know. So that was interesting. But
Yeah. As far as I made a video. I think it was like my Christmas video on meaning, and the way I've been able to kind of visualize how meaning works in my life now, and probably even when I was a Mormon, is like I have these. Here's like the timeline of my life, and I have these chunks of meaning, but they're pretty fleeting. So like you start something new, you go to you've been wanting to go to college, you go to college, you find a lot of meaning in that, and then like a few years in, you're like, wait a minute, I'm losing it. And then you find, oh, I actually want to have this job after I go to college. So that kind of helps you drive through college, and now you're at that job. And then you're just kind of in this cycle of like hunting for meaning. And then there's certain things that can give you meaning and span your whole life. And that's like one of the things that religion does is it gives you this like lifetime meaning. And I'm not even saying that it's true that there was meaning, but it gives you the feeling that you had meaning. And there's not a whole lot of things in our world that can provide lifetime meaning. I think
right.
family and kids are another good example.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start having kids and once you get married and have a spouse, like, and even your parents, like, there's a level of meaning there as well. But once you lose religion, you lose like one of the biggest sources of lifetime meaning that you can find. But I don't
Yeah.
think that means you can't find meaning elsewhere. It just means that sometimes it's a lot harder and you have to keep adding up meaning to keep your life fulfilling in any way.
Well, and I'd also like to point out that like just because you have that big picture doesn't necessarily save you from a lot of the same problems that you have like with a secular mindset too. Like you can kind of get to the point where you don't understand what the point of religion is too. Like when the big picture's not resonating anymore, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah. You just get in that autopilot with any of
yeah.
these sources of
Anything,
meaning. Once you kind of get in the routine, they start to lose a lot of their
right?
their value of their ability to like produce meaning for you.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah.
I did want to add a few other things I wanted to bring up. Oh, you had mentioned the angry ex-Mormons, which is real. Do you think I am an angry ex-Mormon?
Um I I don't know. I think there's angry
I
ex-Mormons that watch your channel.
Oh, as in like, yeah. Do you think the production of my channel is the image of angry ex-Mormons? And because I don't necessarily disagree, and I also don't think it's necessarily a bad term. So I just
Uh-huh.
am kind of curious of what your view of my content
Oh,
is.
oh, yeah, I feel like you're filling a niche. Yeah. It's different. It's a different flavor for sure. Like I would say that you are going like straight in line with like probably new atheist type line of thinking, which is not what Mormon stories is, and it's not what uh anything I've ever seen is. So it's definitely your own flavor, but yeah, that's how I would.
But you
You're
do
the
think
you're
it
the
falls in?
crossover. You're the crossover between like Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Mormonism. Like you're tying all those things together. I feel like at least that's the
Yeah, well,
vibe I
yeah,
get.
and I appreciate that because obviously I love them. But um, I mean, that is it. I think part of it is because that's naturally where I'm inclined to go, and it's also so I left the church before my mission, and I say that mostly as in like I didn't get like a
You're
super
Pimo
thorough.
before your mission. And then you went on a mission still.
No,
Wait a
no,
minute.
no. I didn't
You
go
didn't
on a
serve a
mission.
mission.
I didn't serve a
Okay, got
mission.
it. Got it. Got it.
So I think I have a little bit inferior understanding of scripture. Um, and so I guess I'm
Wait, so
just
you feel
not.
like if you would have gone on a mission, you would have known your scriptures better? That's
Yeah, I
your.
think so.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So I basically I try not to get in the weeds of scripture. I'll use scripture here and there, but I'm more about like bigger picture logical issues that you don't need to know. You're not going to get into like the nitty gritty of like the context and
Okay.
which source do you like. I'm just like one of my biggest things that is still to this day is mind blowing to me is the Passover story because it's so interesting. A, it's a celebration to this day. B, I saw it as a celebration when I was a Mormon. but really the story is horrible. And to me it's just a story of God being a horribly immoral person. And you don't really need to know a lot of like the context, and you just need to know the basics of the story. And to me it has a lot of weight, and ability to convince somebody that. So that's kind of the world I try to stay in. I think that's why you get that flavor of my channel. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I agree, and I agree that I have kind of an angry ex-Mormon channel, but I'm trying to specifically at the end of videos try to give a positive spin and try to give a building spin
Yeah, you
on
do that.
things.
Hmm.
Um, which
Like like to give an olive branch or patience for your family because they're, you they're where you were, kind of idea.
yeah, definitely, and
I think
that's where
I've
like
heard you say that.
the Passover story for me is interesting because I was also one of those people. Like it's so crazy that I could hear this story and not even realize, in my opinion, and I think it's pretty clear that God is the bad guy, as in he's the angel of death that kills all these innocent boys just to get
So
at the Pharaoh.
when you did like appreciate that story, what was the positive spin on it? I can't say that we
Well,
focused a lot on it, so maybe
so
I.
the Mormon religion doesn't really, which I somewhat appreciate, but it's still the story of Moses and freeing the Israelites. That's what you focus on.
Mm,
You focus on, oh, the Israelites were freed, and you don't really ever think like, oh, but what about those Egyptian boys? I thought God was perfectly just. Is it just to kill an innocent person?
right.
And like if you actually read the scripture, it even says like even the Pharaoh's servant's son. It's like basically a slave's son, and in the Bible it like specifies that the servant's son was killed. It's like, man, this is not a good story. This is very,
That reminds me of one of Penn Jillette's like quote that he says all the time. He's like, if you want someone to become an atheist, just have them read the Bible or something like that.
it's actually. Do you know Jeff Durbin and Apologia Studios at all?
Hmm.
I literally just commented on one of their videos, and I said people say that if you want to become an atheist, just have them read the Bible. I disagree. I think the best way is to have them watch Apologia Studio, because it was so painful to watch it. I have more beef with them, as in the evangelical community, than I do with Mormons for sure. Um,
Are you familiar with Pine Creek's channel? Pine Creek
no,
channel.
it's come up just a couple times in the past like few weeks. I've heard his name.
So he he is an ex-Christian, so he's more familiar with, and he went through a lot of different kinds of Christianity before he ended up in the atheist boat. And he says that he feels like they're the they're the most consistent. The Calvinists are,
No, so I agree that they're consistent in a certain sense. I'd say
yeah,
they're very much like, hey, let's look at the text,
yeah.
and so there's
Or
like a
he's
lot.
sorry, not the most consistent. Well, maybe the most consistent, the most believable. If you're gonna take any of them, they're the most believable. And so Calvinists will hear that and they'll say, "Yeah," but then it's just like you just said, they're clearly the biggest jerks.
Well, and I would they're only the most like did you see my brother Jacob? They debate. He debated
I
some
did see
of
that one. Yeah,
so the problem, in my opinion, with Calvinism, not that we need to make this a big Calvinist conversation, is their circular reasoning when it comes to the infallibility of the Bible.
yeah,
Basically, the Bible's perfect. How do you know the Bible is perfect? Well, read the Bible, like the Bible says the Bible is perfect, and then it's like, so if you accept that premise, then you can make a pretty compelling case for their, believability.
yeah.
But to me, that's just totally, uh, you can't stand on that.
Yeah, they both did a really good job in that debate, pointing out the reasons why I don't believe in either of them. So
That is so funny that you say that. I actually had said that to my brother.
I think I did too.
I'm like, I've seen it multiple times where Christians will debate with other Christians, and
Yeah.
they're very good at just pointing out the flaws in each other's reasoning. And I'm like, I agree.
Yep. Yep.
And I had actually recommended. I said, next time you debate, you need to have an. You can't have. I think the debate was like, what is your ultimate authority? You need to have a debate where one person has to take the pro and the con, That way you can't have that dilemma
Mm,
where you both could win and you both could lose.
hmm.
If it's a yes or no question, then only one person can win.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you like these kinds of interviews, please let me know in the comment section below who you'd like me to interview and what kind of questions you'd like me to ask. I think a lot of the times we talk about the problems with leaving the church, and for very good reasons, because there are issues, and it can be a very traumatic experience in a lot of ways. But I don't think we highlight a lot of the good reasons. And so I just want to get your take on what has been some of your favorite things about leaving the church, if you have any. Hopefully, you have some.
Well, I wouldn't go back, right? Like I wouldn't trade it. It was I'll go back to church. Like you say this in church all the time. I went there's terrible trial, but I wouldn't I wouldn't take it back because I've learned a lot. So I would just the potential. Like it is chaos. I'll use the Jordan Peterson language there to irritate some of your people.
So I'll clarify. I like Jordan Peterson in every way except for religion.
Well, I've just there's some people in my comments that just hate that I bring them up so much, so
Yeah.
I keep doing it. But anyways, it is completely chaotic to have your belief system collapse, but there's a lot of potential there, and so I do feel that potential. Like there's a lot of opportunity to grow. There's a lot of opportunity to learn. Like a lot of fear that I had is gone, and I'm able to like learn about the things I'm interested in. Um, it was hindering me from doing the thing that I was doing, which is like what I always said when I was active is the purpose is to become like Christ. And I feel like I was stuck in a place where I feel like um, there is a step in life. You don't necessarily have to take it where you realize how much you don't know, right? Like you realize the absurdity of of life, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but um as I was struggling toward the end, my thing was like I didn't have this I didn't I couldn't I couldn't bear my testimony like I was supposed to. And I remember I listened to Elder Holland's talk, Lord I Believe, like a ton the last few years that I was practicing because I was like, I'll just lean on his testimony. But I found it odd that my testimony was getting weaker and weaker. And so I guess I'm glad I got to realize that that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And I'm glad I got to accept that and not have to like beat myself up for not being convinced about certain things. So no, there's a lot of good things, for sure.
Yeah. I
I can be
maybe this is
honest
kind
with
of
myself, like
no,
fully honest with myself.
and I think that's what I feel this way, and I think that's kind of what you're saying too. Is like you don't have that painful feeling of trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole when you get information. You can kind of just say, what do I actually believe? Where does this evidence go? And go there. And like that feels so relieving. Otherwise you're like constantly like, oh, how do I make this one fit? Oh, that one hurt. How are we gonna solve this problem?
Yeah, yeah.
um, and yes, I love that, and but I think there's some people that don't love that so much, and I think that's again some of the nuances that make people's experiences vary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if you just want to talk a little bit, you've mentioned Jordan Peterson quite a bit. If you just want to give a little bit of like your thoughts on Jordan Peterson, and in particular, or at the end, if you want to talk a little bit about like his stance on religion and your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Okay, so I became aware of him because I was following the intellectual dark web, and uh, I would honestly I'd say that it was partly because of his influence of why I was struggling so much, like teaching my kids stuff that I wasn't sure about. So I kind of lost my belief of supernatural stuff because of Penn and Teller, and so but I felt like I could still like act like I believed, right? Like the Jordan Peterson would say, act like I believe in God. And so I was like, oh, I'll just act like I believe. And it was very unsatisfying when like you're reading a lesson manual and it tells you like what to say. And I'm just like, I don't know how I can be teaching my kids this. Like, I don't know that we have this much confidence to be teaching it like this. Um, so right
Do,
after I
do,
left, I read his books. I feel like he gave me a soft place to land. I really liked him for like he could say no wrong for quite a while. Um,
I do feel like when he was first coming out and talking, he maybe I was just on the same page and he could say no wrong. But it seems like more and more I'm hearing him say stuff and I'm like, this makes no sense.
hmm,
Where he used to make a lot more sense. I don't know if that's because my mind,
right.
mindset has changed, or if he's going off the rails, in my opinion.
Okay, so I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. I don't think he has changed. I think his demeanor maybe has though, for
So
sure.
I think one thing that has changed is before he got sick, he wasn't so sold on the religious idea. He was a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more,
Oh,
what is going on here? But then when he came back from being sick, now he's much more pro religion, and he said that straight up. And I think, to me, it smells a lot like him trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, which is, when he talks about things. Did you
when
hear?
has he said that? Because I haven't heard him.
So when I did an episode on is he a believer, and there's like an episode, like a newer episode, where he basically says like, and he's like crying, I think, and he says like he found Christ, but again, it's like not the Christ that we think of. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
that's
I
the
think
the
I
main
watched that
point.
one. I really liked that one because here's a fun fact. When I was still practicing, it really bothered me that he wouldn't just say, I believe in God. I'm like, why is he just not saying it? Clearly he believes in God. Why won't he just say it? And it's interesting because now then I went through a phase where I would call myself like flat out an atheist, which now I'm no, I won't deny the label if someone wants to put it on me, but I don't like the label just because it comes with baggage that I don't agree with.
It's funny. Everyone has a interesting relationship to the word.
Yeah.
Like every atheist, or whatever
Yeah.
we are, like has their way of phrasing how they feel about atheism, or the
Well,
label.
I was listening to Doug at the Pine Creek channel a lot, and he's like, "We just need to call ourselves atheists so that they can see good people are atheists. So just use it." And that's kind of what his reasoning was. And um, I just feel like there there's a difference between like what Jordan Peterson is and John Vervaeke is, which that was it's what I would consider myself. There is a difference, and so but if someone says, "Oh, you don't believe in a personal God that cares about you and loves you," and like gives me the whole spiel, and I'm like, "No," then you're an atheist. Okay, like that's fine. I'm not trying to be a wolf in sheep's clothing or anything, but
And
I
again, you
do.
can kind of go wherever. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to have a commitment to one side or the other.
right,
And obviously that's like idealistic, and it's something we strive for, or at least I'm pretty sure it's a good trait. And like you're saying, maybe we're missing out on something by not having some kind of firm convictions. But
sure,
like that's one of the benefits. It's kind of like, how do you define atheism? Okay, yeah, I fall into that.
yeah, yep, yep. So, anyways, and so anyway, and now when I went through my atheist phase, I was like, he definitely doesn't believe in God. He just needs to say so.
So that's funny. So I was gonna, when you said like you were listening to him and you're like, you just believe in God. I was like, that's so weird. I have the exact opposite thought, but obviously it's because I was also coming from it from the
Well, I
atheist
wish he would
perspective.
just say it. That's all I wanted. I wanted him to define himself. It bothered me. I guess it bothered me when I was practicing, and it bothered me when I went through my atheist phase. And at this point, I really just I don't care as much.
So
So
I'm still bothered by it, and I
okay,
think it's because I think it's a huge red flag of not manipulation, but him not being honest.
you want to place on Jordan Peterson that he's trying to be dishonest.
Or I want to place on him that he maybe, and like all of these are not good things. So I'm not trying to say
Well, no,
The
that
either that or he has a lack of, this is going to come off pretty arrogant, but a lack of courage in accepting his beliefs. Like I don't think, I think he wants to, and this is where I actually think I'd probably agree with the first statement though, where I think it's deceptive, or um, is he understands the postmodern game, and he seems to play it so well with his faith.
hmm,
You know, he's more
yeah,
interested in the
I could.
power aspect, in the way it makes you, your actions in the world, that he doesn't actually care about the underlying beliefs.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I don't. There's a part of me that does not disagree with you. Um, I don't know if you caught his first speech after he was not sick anymore. He was, I think it was at it was some like Christian college. And during the Q&A, someone asked him and said, "Why won't you just say you believe in God?" Or they said something like that. He got pretty mad at them. Like cuz he knew um I don't know how to describe it. Like um yeah, he was pretty upset. Like he really like dug his teeth into that person just as much as he digs his teeth into people that are like atheist and asking the question. So he gets just as mad about it from either side because people want to put him in a box. And I think so. John Vervaeke, let me shift over here. John Vervaeke, he has created a new term called non-theist. He basically says that the atheists and the theists that are over on the atheist theist YouTube channels arguing and bickering with one another are asking the wrong question. So it's hard. Um, I, I don't know that that's like a postmodern game to be like, hey, you're asking the wrong question versus like where postmodernism is more like they change the definition of words so that it has like two meanings and it's meant to confuse. I don't think he's trying to confuse people. I think he's just, it is what it is. Life is confusing.
So I mean, I think, well, I guess I'm not gonna, you know, comment on what I think his intent is. If I already have, I didn't mean to, but like it seems that's exactly what he's doing. Like to me, it seems he's using Christian language, he's using God, he's using Jesus, he's using Christianity, and this is, we can talk about this forever about, you know, the definitions of God and religion.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but to me, he's using those words, which means something to most people, and that's why these people are asking him, "Why don't you just say you believe in God? You're saying you're a Christian," or I actually don't know if he claims to be a Christian, but he like leaves it ambiguous enough where like a lot of people draw that conclusion, and
Mm.
then he won't even say he believes in God. So it's like, okay, either you're not a Christian and you don't believe in God, or you are, or you don't know. That's fine, but then you just can't say you're a Christian, or yeah.
Yeah, I remember I saw him. It's one of his lectures, probably the Maps of Meaning lecture that he has on YouTube. And he said, "Oh, you think you're not religious? Like, what are you doing when you go to a movie? That's religious." And I remember commenting in the comments, and I was like, you claim to say be precise with your words, and 99% of people when they say religious, they mean they go to church every week, and that's not going to a movie.
100
Like,
percent. Like
right?
the
So
fact that he claims precision is always like mine. It blows my mind.
yeah, but um, what's tough is I do understand what he's saying at the same time. And what do you do when there's no word for that anymore? Either because literalist, fundamentalist type religious people have co opted a word that used to mean something else, and then there's no more word for that. Like, what do you do with that?
So I mean, what is he trying? In my mind, there
You
are
don't
like
understand
usually
what he's
there
trying
are
to say?
words. No, no, I only understand because I've listened to him enough and had to figure it out. To
Well,
me, most of
no.
the time he's talking about God. He's talking about, do you have a highest value, and are you even like words like worship. Like, are you giving all your attention to something? Do you have something that you are aiming towards? Like,
Hmm.
those are all fine words. And if someone says like, "Hey, Forrest, do you have something you're aiming towards?" I'd be like, "Or do you have a highest value?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I do."
Hmm.
But wouldn't at all say that that's me being religious.
Okay, that's
Which I'm fine.
interesting.
I'm actually fine with saying I'm religious, but I just know it's this now. It's a the reason they want me to say I'm religious is because they're doing the postmodern power battle, and they're trying to use word games to try to make, maybe similarities or comparisons between atheism and theism.
No, that's fair enough. And this was something else. Like a lot of times, this space of people, I'll include myself, will say things like, "Well, I don't want to be an atheist because that's meaningless," and someone will say, "You mean nihilistic then?" Like, so there is already another word for nihilism. You need to use atheist for nihilism, right? That's true. Um, no, that's those are fair criticisms. I guess I'm happy to give him the benefit of the doubt.
No, and I don't know if you've seen. I have a few videos on my channel about them, like the very first ones, and so don't watch them; they're horrible. But um, because I have a religious
No,
channel, I
I
focus on his.
commented on the Jordan Peterson one,
Oh, you
and I
did?
was like, yeah, I was like, I gave you good. I the same thing. I thought the same thing. I gave you.
So
It was good
if
remarks.
someone watched my channel, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, Forrest hates Jordan Peterson." I only hate the religious side of Jordan Peterson, or when he comments, like I think in that video, like I always go to him and Sam Harris when Sam's like, define God, and to me, his definition is like absurd. I mean, it's not even a single definition. It's like 10 different definitions that are all.
That seems like all of Jordan Peterson. So when you say you don't like the religious part of him, what do you mean that you like?
So what I like about him is I really like him being willing to stand up for social issues and on a moral level. Like now it seems pretty, it's done him well, but back when he was doing it, when he first got famous and it was over the transgender thing, like he was doing that just out of, principle. And so I respect him a lot for that. And
It's been a lot
he
easier
still,
to be quiet, huh?
yeah, and he does that a lot, and he stands up a lot, and he gets in discussions and debates, and it's like, man, that's brave in my mind. But the religious side, I just can't get on board with.
Hmm. It's interesting.
Okay, so the last question, um, it's pretty common. I feel like both Mormons and ex-Mormons will say this, and I recently listened to um, you and My Spiritual Life,
Hmm.
Jared's wife,
Oh, that's right.
talking about John DeLynn
Ex
and the
Morgan.
whole what
Ex Morgan.
ex Morgan, um, talking about John DeLynn and just the idea of like making this your identity. And it seems like in general the argument is basically like, oh, it's kind of sad if like this is your whole thing, and you have attached yourself to being anti something.
Hmm.
And so I'll just leave it there. Is that am I framing that somewhat correctly?
If it's the moment I'm thinking of, it it's I feel like the optimal ex-Mormon story is that you care no more about Mormonism. And so when I said it's sad that obviously that's not John Dolan. That's what I meant. Like I don't know how that could be him because he's made that his income
So
at this point.
so this is where my pushback will come. I don't agree that the optimal solution at this point is being ambivalent about Mormonism. But I guess that's where the other question, I guess, is do you think Mormonism, how would I phrase it? Like,
Net
is a
positive or
net
net good?
positive or net negative?
I just said the same thing. I would say Mormonism is what it is. Like, I don't think it's helpful. How do I put this?
Like, I agree that I think this question's too big and I don't have a great answer.
Um, yeah, let me
I
think.
have a better question if you want to move on to the,
It could
it's
be
more
better.
specific.
It could be better, and it's not. It could be better in the ways that I think a lot of the Mormon stories crowd would say it needs to be better. I think where it needs to be better is it needs to be less legalistic, and then naturally it would be better on the other fronts too. On the Mormon, what they're all worried about, I think it would be better if it was less legalistic. But it's tough because by I think the more defined your dogma is, the stronger your community is. And
Yeah.
so it's like a paradox. So I don't know how to solve that problem.
Yeah, and especially when we both probably agree that like probably the best part about Mormonism is the strong community aspect.
Yeah.
And so if we're like get rid of the dogma, which basically agree that dogma probably makes a stronger community, and then but also it's like the negative aspect of it. So
Well,
yeah,
it's almost like you if you take a belief system and it defines maybe more than it should, but those questions are already answered. You don't have to go out and figure them out. And so that leaves up your bandwidth to do the rest of your life. And when they've answered some of those things wrong, it doesn't work for the people, some people, right? Whether it's whoever it is, I'm one of them, right? Like it didn't work. Um, so I don't know. Like I don't, I mean, I say dogma and I think people think I ought to automatically assume it's like a negative thing. It just is. I wouldn't say it's a negative or positive thing. It's a
well,
thing.
would you say it's a negative thing if it's contrary to truth?
Well, I think it's really hard to define truth, right? So by guessing or taking a stab at it and saying, well, this is what I think truth is, I think that helps you. I mean, that's kind of what the whole order and chaos thing is, right? Like, so you order, you make order out of things and you haven't ordered it perfectly. Um, and it can be tyrannical. And that's kind of where I think the church is. It's a little bit tyrannical,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that you can't live under a tyranny that's benevolent in some sense, like,
So this is where I think there's like I do not that I don't need to like convince that everybody needs to leave, but would it be a better position to say the ideal state is to only care about Mormonism enough to help people that I think would be better off without it?
well, I guess I'll answer with a question. Like, do you think that there aren't enough resources out there for people to, like, if they are willingly ready to expose themselves to the truth? I mean, Wikipedia is right there, and it's not wrong.
Well, for example, you said one of the things that was Jordan Peterson was one of the ways you were
That
able
gave
to
me the
leave.
courage. Yeah,
So,
that
and it's
gave me
not
the courage.
only
But
I
that had
think
nothing to do with Mormonism either, right?
But so yeah, but I'm just saying that people, people's thoughts and ideas. Like, I'm not a big believer in the idea of like, not that you're saying this, but like, oh, you're not going to win anybody over with arguments. It's like people won me over with arguments. Like, I think it is possible to you almost like place seeds of doubt that end up kind of growing, and then that causes real effects in people's lives. But so it's hard to predict, like, what you do, how is that going to affect somebody? Who knows? What do I do? Who knows? But even regardless of my arguments, I what about the idea of just like showing people, kind of like you said, Pine Creek had said, like showing people that hey, this guy's an atheist online, and yet is a good person.
Yeah. However, well, anyone can know someone online.
Yeah. So projects himself as a good person, perhaps.
He's telling his fans to call themselves atheists and go be a good neighbor still.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up and get your final comments, I think that there are lots of examples in history too of people defining themselves in opposition to something, and that is a very meaningful personally, but also meaningful to the world endeavor. So as much as I disagree with, sorry, there's a hair. As much as I disagree with John DeLynn in a lot of ways, I think it's undeniable that what he's done is amazing, and what he's, the community he's built and the space he's kind of opened up for people that do want to leave. You said it yourself, and I was on that, this on that train too. Of like, he was probably one of the first people I went to when I was questioning things.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think he's done an amazing thing, and I think a lot of people would be very, if they had that big of an impact in the world, I think they would be very satisfied with that in their lives. Like a lot of people have way less of an impact than John DeLynn does, even if it is in opposition to something. I also have a video where like I think this opposition thing is kind of, and like tearing, the idea of like tearing down. I don't see it really as tearing down. To me, it's almost like you are opening up the ability, like you were saying, how they have all the answers already for you. To me, I'm opening up the ability for you to make your own life. And this is where I get into big disagreements about like, do you need to have a landing pad for somebody, or like, don't tear it down. It's like the biggest benefit to me is the idea that you get to decide. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that
long rant,
that
but yeah.
well, that reminds me of that debate with Radio Free Mormon and Midnight Mormons.
Did you see
Um,
my most recent video?
I haven't.
I,
Is
I
it about
have.
the tearing down part? Did you clip out that part?
It and my brother's keeper.
Yeah. So I have some mixed feelings about that because I think the way that I was convinced to leave, um, how do I word this? I like, I willingly went and did it. I think it is possible to like prematurely throw something at somebody and it will convince them, but maybe they weren't ready for it. You know? Like, I think that's a possibility.
No, and in the video I actually addressed that. Where that was in the video or was it in the comments. I more and more I actually do, if I'm especially in person talking to somebody, I'll be like, I'm gonna tell you something that I think is damaging to the Mormon Church. Do you want to hear it? If not, I'm not gonna tell you. But like, I kind of want them to be like, okay, I'm ready for this.
Hmm.
And I hope that doesn't sound like arrogant. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm saying there's the potential. I'm going to say something that I think is negative. So, do you want to
Well,
get involved?
I'm just saying there's a lot of people and their belief, I believe, is a house of cards. Mine was. I'm not saying everyone, every Latter Day Saint. Like your brother's definitely not that. I don't think. Um, but there are a bunch of people where their belief system is on a house of cards, and I wouldn't want to take the cards out from under them. Like I really do think that it's better when you do it willingly. I guess. Like I actually went on to subreddit. That's the place that I thought, oh, if I want to know the criticisms, that's gonna be where I go. Like that's gonna be on there, and that's it took me 5 seconds to find the CS letter. So like it's at people's fingertips. If they want to look at it, they can. So um so yeah, I just don't find it. I don't see the need. So there's that aspect of it. But when you were talking about, is I'm going to say maybe John Dehlin is doing something amazing, like people in history, right? Um,
But do you think that there are people in history that
yeah, for
define
sure.
themselves in opposition?
That definitely, like, I would say that um, I, there's people that define themselves in opposition to communism, right? like, so yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not what it is, but I would say that like just because you think you're doing something good doesn't mean it necessarily is good either. And just because people are telling you thank you doesn't mean that means you're doing something that
Yeah,
benefits
yeah.
them
And I've heard you
either.
make that comment, and
Does it
I
feel
at first
real?
I disagreed with the idea of like, oh, why do you do this? And he just says, oh, it's the comment section that, all the people that say thank you. That's why I do this. And so at first I disagreed. I was like, really? I think that is okay. But then I thought about it more, and I think the better way of maybe, I don't know if this is what he means and this is what people mean, but it's like that's the motivator. I hope they actually believe it's doing good in the world or it's has a net positive or something. But the motivator is the comments that you get from real people.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right that like it's not. There's a lot of bad things in the world, and you'll get people be
There's
like,
a lot of
"Thanks for
echo
telling me that."
chambers. There's a
Yeah,
lot of echo chambers in the world where there's plenty of people out there willing to tell you, "Hey, good job."
yeah. I mean, in fact,
And
in every, that like
you
slave
find any
owners, I'm
crazy
sure had people
yeah,
that were like, "Thank you for fighting for our right to own slaves."
yeah,
It's not like doesn't mean that fighting to own slaves is a good cause.
right. Yeah. So, so yeah, that I don't I'm gonna say I don't know. Like I think I think he truly believes he is, and I will give John Dehlin the benefit of the doubt too, by the way. Like it's not just Jordan Peterson I give the benefit of the doubt to. I give John Dehlin the benefit of the doubt as much as I yeah. There's only been a couple of times where there's been some stuff that I've taken personally, but oh well.
And
um
with and it's I almost am angry that we even spent this much time talking about John Dehlin because I hate it. But like, do you think that earlier on you would have said this wasn't that good, or has it kind of been like I don't know if the whole endeavor, or it's like hey I think you're kind of going off the rails now, and now there's a problem.
no, I think someone's gonna do it. You know what I mean? I said this, someone commented, someone sent me a message on Facebook and they were like, why don't you just leave Mormon discussions and just go all out XX Mormon or something like that. And I was like, I don't think it would help. Just like I don't think what they're doing is helping. I don't think it would help if I did that either. Like, um, and the way I put it was something along the lines of like, I think someone would fill that void because I don't think it's really John Dehlin isn't necessarily John Dehlin. People are giving him attention, and that's what's feeding it. It's not John Dehlin necessarily. I think the people watching are the thing that's feeding that thing. So if he didn't do it, someone else would. So does that make sense? I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be there either way. Whether
Right. Put a different name on it. Who cares? It's
yeah,
like I personally I do kind of feel bad for John Dehlin. Like I said earlier. That's like I genuinely do. I my guess is his relationships with his family that are still practicing Latter-day Saints is terrible. So that would suck. I couldn't
I guess
handle that
I
personally.
agree. I feel bad for that aspect, but I don't know if I put myself in his shoes, I would imagine that I would feel very satisfied. Like I've created something in a space that, in my opinion, was necessary and helpful to a lot of people. And so you're saying without him, someone else would have done it. But I guess I mean I'm saying whoever did it, they did something,
They did
in my
something good.
opinion, that was needed and is yeah something that I think he could be proud of, and I'm assuming he is proud of.
Yeah, and I'm not for or against it. I maybe I don't know. It is
Well,
what it
and I
is.
guess a good way to put it is maybe it's possible like there's a lot of people that do good things that also you feel bad for.
That's true.
A lame example, I'm thinking of William Wallace, for example.
Freedom.
Yeah, like I feel bad for him, but also like I think the movie version of him did something awesome. And now I just made a John Dehlin William Wallace comparison, which I feel bad about.
Why?
It's just too much credit to John Dehlin, I think.
Oh.
I guess we can wrap it up. If you want to, do you have anything else you want to say or any parting shots?
Uh, well, as scatterbrained as this was, like that's exactly what my podcast is. So if you're interested in that, I guess you can go listen. Oh, it is kind of hard to find. Maybe I should tell people
It is
like
hard to find.
if you want to listen to my stuff on YouTube, you have to go to the playlist. Where will you go? But if you listen to podcasts, I think it is easier to find in your podcast apps. Like you can like subscribe to it and then have an auto download or
Oh,
whatever.
good to know because I've been doing the YouTube route and it is very hard
And you won't see
to find
like
it.
new ones unless I started a Facebook group so that I could notify people when I drop a new one. So there's that if you
Cool.
want to join the Facebook group, but
And then anywhere else, Spotify
it
podcast,
should
I
be
can.
everywhere.
Okay,
I
cool.
I couldn't find it on iTunes though, so I don't know if like I got kicked out of iTunes or what. Or if I need to like bug Bill Real about that and say, hey, you need to fix this. But
Yeah. Cool. Well,
anyways,
yeah. So everybody check out Marty on Mormon Discussions and specifically Where Will You Go?
yeah.
That's all I've got. I hope you liked the interview. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.